The knife pressed against Adunni's throat, cold steel biting into her skin as she stood frozen in the dimly lit parking garage beneath the Gangnam penthouse. Her heart hammered so violently she thought it might burst through her ribcage. The man behind her, face obscured, breath reeking of cigarettes, whispered in broken English, "You leave Korea. 72 hours. Or the little girl dies too." Before Adunni could scream, before she could process the terror clawing at her chest, the man crumpled to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. Behind him stood Baek Jun-woo, his hand still extended from the strike that had dropped her attacker. His eyes, those dark, unreadable eyes that had looked through her for 10 months, now burned with something primal and protective. "Get in the car," Jun-woo commanded, his voice low and dangerous. Adunni's legs wouldn't move. She stared at the unconscious man, then at Jun-woo, her body trembling. He said, my daughter. I know what he said." Jun-woo gripped her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Adunni, look at me. No one touches you. No one touches Folake. Do you understand?" It was the first time he'd ever said her name. The first time his hands had touched her with intention. The first time she'd seen fear flicker beneath his controlled exterior. "How did you?" she started. "I've had security watching you since the day I gave you that plane ticket." His jaw clenched. "I should have anticipated this. The Yamada Syndicate wants leverage. They chose wrong. If you're already hooked by this story, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you'll want to see where this goes. And drop a comment telling me if you think Adunni should have run or stayed to fight. Let's get into it." 10 days earlier, Adunni had been invisible. She moved through the penthouse like a ghost, caring for Jun-woo's twin sons with a devotion that bordered on desperation. 7-year-old Dae and Jean were her world in Korea, the only thing that made the ache of separation from her own daughter bearable. Each morning she braided their hair, packed their lunches with little notes in Yoruba that they couldn't read but treasured anyway, and sang them to sleep with songs her own mother had sung to her in Lagos. Baek Jun-woo barely registered her existence. He was a shadow himself, arriving late, leaving early, his phone constantly buzzing with calls he took in rapid Korean, his voice dropping to lethal whispers. Adunni knew what he was. Everyone knew. You didn't live in Seoul without hearing the rumors about Baek Jun-woo, the man who controlled everything from Busan to Incheon, whose word could end lives or save them. She'd taken the job anyway. Desperation made you brave, or foolish. Sometimes both. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. Adunni was folding laundry in the small room adjacent to the kitchen when her phone vibrated. The video call icon flashed, her caseworker in Atlanta. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. The woman's face appeared, professional and apologetic. "Ms. Oladil, I'm calling about Folake." Adunni's world tilted. "Is she hurt? What happened?" "She's physically fine, but the temporary foster placement isn't working out. The family can't handle her behavioral issues. She's asking for you constantly, refusing to eat." The caseworker paused. "Ms. Oladil, if you can't retrieve her within 25 days, the state will begin permanent placement proceedings." The phone slipped from Adunni's fingers. 25 days. She had 25 days to cross the world, navigate American immigration bureaucracy with no money and no legal status that would allow her to bring Folake back to Korea. 25 days before she lost her daughter forever. She didn't hear Jun-woo enter. Didn't realize she was sobbing until his shadow fell across her. "What happened?" Adunni looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks, and for the first time in 10 months, she didn't care about maintaining the professional distance between employer and employee. "My daughter. I'm going to lose my daughter." Jun-woo's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. He crouched beside her, his movements deliberate. "Explain." And she did. Everything. How she'd fled Nigeria after her husband's fists had broken her ribs one too many times. How she'd left 6-year-old Folake with her sister in Atlanta, promising to send for her once she'd saved enough money. How her sister had died in a car accident 6 months ago, and Folake had been placed in emergency foster care. How the visa restrictions meant she couldn't bring Folake to Korea without thousands of dollars in legal fees and documentation she didn't have. I have 300,000 won saved, Adunni whispered, roughly $250. It's not even enough for the plane ticket. Junwoo stood, pulled out his phone, and made 3 calls in rapid Korean. When he finished, he looked down at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You leave Thursday morning. Business class to Atlanta. I'm wiring 50 million won to an attorney in Georgia who specializes in international family law. He's the best, and he owes me a favor. You'll have full salary continuation plus a bonus. When you return, you'll bring Folake here. Adunni stared at him. Why would you do this? You're not just anything. Junwoo's voice cut through her protest. You've raised my sons for almost a year. You sing to them in Yoruba. You leave notes in their lunches that make them smile even when they can't read them. You see them as children, not assets or heirs to my business. No one else does that. He paused. Let me help you raise your daughter. You've earned it. Adunni couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. This man, this dangerous, untouchable man, was offering her the impossible. I don't understand, she managed. Junwoo's hand reached out, hesitated, then gently wiped a tear from her cheek. The gesture was so unexpected, so tender, that Adunni's heart stuttered. You will, he said softly. The flight to Atlanta felt surreal. Adunni sat in seat 2A, surrounded by businessmen in expensive suits, while her worn duffel bag sat in the overhead compartment. She kept touching the leather armrest, the complimentary champagne she hadn't drunk, the cashmere blanket the flight attendant had offered. None of it felt real. What felt real was the photo on her phone. Folake at age 4, gap-toothed and laughing, before everything had fallen apart. Before Adunni had become an ocean away. When the plane touched down in Atlanta, Adunni's stomach twisted with anticipation and dread. The attorney, a silver-haired black man named Marcus Webb, met her at baggage claim with a warm handshake and a folder thick with documents. Mr. Beck called in a significant favor, Marcus said as they drove toward the Child Services office. I've expedited the paperwork for a dependent visa, secured enrollment at Seoul International Academy for Folake, and prepared housing verification. The caseworker will have questions, but we're solid. How much does this cost? Adunni asked, her voice small. Marcus glanced at her. Mr. Beck's already handled it. Focus on your daughter. The Child Services building was grey and institutional, smelling of industrial cleaner and desperation. Adunni's hands trembled as Marcus led her through security, down fluorescent-lit hallways, to a small conference room where a tired-looking caseworker waited. And then the door opened, and Folake walked in. She was smaller than Adunni remembered. Thinner. Her hair, once carefully braided, was pulled into a messy ponytail. She wore clothes that didn't fit right, and her eyes. God, her eyes held an anger that broke Adunni's heart. Folake, baby. Don't. Folake's voice was cold, so much colder than any 6-year-old should be. You left me, Mama. You said you'd come back in 3 months. It's been 3 years. Adunni dropped to her knees, tears streaming. I know, and I'm so sorry. I tried, baby, I tried every day. Auntie died and you weren't there. I waited for you. I waited and you never came. Folake's voice cracked, the anger giving way to something more devastating. Grief. Why didn't you come? Because I couldn't afford to, Adunni sobbed. Because the visa wouldn't let me leave and come back. Because I was sending every dollar to Auntie for you, but it meant I couldn't save enough to fly home. I wanted to, Folake. Every single day I wanted to. The caseworker cleared her throat. Ms. Oladil, we need to discuss. Give them a moment, Marcus interrupted firmly. Folake stood rigid, her small body trembling. Then, like a dam breaking, she launched herself at Adunni, tiny fists pounding against her mother's chest. I hate you. I hate you for leaving. Dunny caught her daughter, held her tight even as Folake fought her. I know. You can hate me. But I'm here now, and I'm never leaving you again. Never. Do you hear me? Folake's punches weakened, turned into desperate clutching. Promise. I promise on everything I am. They stayed like that, tangled together on the floor of that sterile office, until Folake's sobs quieted into hiccups. When Dunny finally looked up, Marcus was presenting documents to the caseworker, his voice smooth and confident as he outlined the stability waiting in Seoul. The employment contract, the housing, the school enrollment, the financial security. The caseworker's skepticism was evident. Ms. Oladil, you're asking me to release this child to a country where you work as domestic help. How can you guarantee? Marcus slid a paper across the table. Mr. Baek Jun-woo, Ms. Oladil's employer, has provided a written guarantee of housing, education, and financial support. He's also sponsoring the expedited dependent visa. The documentation is ironclad. The caseworker's eyes widened slightly at the name. Even in Atlanta, apparently, Baek Jun-woo's reputation preceded him. She studied the papers, then Dunny, then Folake, who was still clinging to her mother. You have 90 days conditional, she finally said. If the situation in Korea doesn't work out, Folake returns to state custody. Understood. Understood, Dunny whispered, holding her daughter tighter. 3 days later, they landed at Incheon International Airport. Folake pressed her face against the window during descent, eyes wide at the sprawling city below. She hadn't said much during the journey, hadn't forgiven Dunny yet, that much was clear, but she hadn't let go of her mother's hand either. As they exited customs, Dunny expected to find a driver. What she found instead stopped her in her tracks. Baek Jun-woo stood in the arrivals hall, flanked by his twin sons. Dae and Jean broke free the moment they spotted Dunny, running toward her with squeals of delight. Dunny, you're back. We missed you so much. Is this Folake? We brought her presents. Folake shrank back, overwhelmed, but the twins were undeterred. Jean thrust a stuffed tiger at her while Dae showed her a coloring book they'd picked out together. Jun-woo approached slowly, his eyes meeting Dunny's over the children's heads. He looked different somehow, less severe, more human. Welcome home, he said quietly. You came yourself, Dunny managed, her throat tight. Of course I did. His gaze shifted to Folake, and his expression softened further. Hello, Folake. Your mother has told me a lot about you. These are my sons, Dae and Jean. They've been very excited to meet you. Folake studied him with the wariness of a child who'd learned not to trust easily. Are you Mama's boss? I am, Jun-woo confirmed. And I'm very glad she works for me, because it means you get to be here now. Something in his tone, genuine, warm, made Folake's shoulders relax slightly. Your sons talk a lot. Jun-woo's lips twitched. Yes, they do. You'll get used to it. The drive back to Gangnam should have been awkward, but the twins filled every silence with chatter, showing Folake their tablets, teaching her basic Korean phrases, promising to show her their favorite park. Dunny watched it all with tears threatening to spill, overwhelmed by the surreal kindness of this moment. In the front seat, Jun-woo caught her eye in the rearview mirror. The look he gave her was loaded with something unspoken, something that made heat bloom in Dunny's chest. They arrived at the penthouse as evening settled over Seoul. Jun-woo had converted one of the guest rooms into a bedroom for Folake. Pastel walls, a bed shaped like a cloud, shelves already stocked with books in English and Korean. Folake's eyes went wide. This is mine. All yours, Jun-woo confirmed. Dae and Jean helped pick everything out. For the first time since Atlanta, Folake smiled. It was small, tentative, but it was there. That night, after the children were asleep, Dunny found Jun-woo on the penthouse balcony overlooking the city. The Seoul skyline glittered like scattered diamonds, and the autumn air carried a crisp chill. She wrapped her cardigan tighter and approached him. Thank you, she said simply. I don't have words big enough for what you've done. Jun-woo turned to her, his expression unreadable in the low light. You don't need words, Dunny. The way he said her name, like a prayer, like something precious, sent shivers down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. Why are you really doing this? She asked. The truth. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, because for 10 months, I watched you love my children as if they were your own. I watched you sacrifice everything. Your happiness, your daughter, your own needs, to give them stability. And I realized, he paused, jaw tightening. I realized that I'd been looking through you because seeing you would mean acknowledging that I'd failed to give my sons what they actually needed. What you gave them effortlessly. Junwoo. You made them feel seen, Dunny. Loved. Safe. Things I didn't know how to give them because no one ever gave them to me. His hand reached out, fingertips brushing her cheek with devastating gentleness. And then I started seeing you. Really seeing you. The way you hum when you cook. The way you pause at the window to watch the sunrise. The way you cry silently in the laundry room when you think no one's watching. His thumb traced her jawline. You became impossible to ignore. Dunny's breath caught. I'm your employee. You're so much more than that. His voice dropped to a whisper. Tell me to stop and I will. She should tell him to stop. Should maintain the boundaries, protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak of wanting someone so far beyond her reach. But she'd spent 3 years being invisible, being powerless, being alone. And this man, this dangerous, complicated man, was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Don't stop, she whispered. Junwoo's kiss was nothing like Dunny expected. It wasn't aggressive or demanding. It was reverent, almost hesitant, as if he was afraid she might disappear. His hands cradled her face like she was made of something fragile and precious, and when she gasped against his mouth, he deepened the kiss with a hunger that made her knees weak. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. Dunny's hands had somehow found their way to Junwoo's chest, feeling his heartbeat thunder beneath her palms. This is insane, she breathed. Completely, he agreed, then kissed her again. This time there was less hesitation, more urgency. Junwoo's hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back to taste her more deeply, and Dunny felt 3 years of loneliness and fear melt away under the heat of his touch. When they finally pulled apart again, his eyes were dark with want. I should go, Dunny whispered, not moving. You should, Junwoo agreed, not releasing her. They stood there, caught in the gravity of something neither could name, until the sound of a child crying broke the spell. Folake. Dunny pulled away immediately, rushing inside. She found her daughter sitting up in bed, tears streaming, caught in the grip of a nightmare. Mama. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Dunny climbed into bed beside her, pulling Folake close. You're safe. I promise you're safe. Folake clung to her, small body shaking. I dreamed you left again. Never, Dunny murmured, rocking her. I'm never leaving you again. She stayed there, holding her daughter until Folake's breathing evened out into sleep. When she finally looked up, Junwoo stood in the doorway, his expression unguarded in a way she'd never seen before. Vulnerable. Almost tender. He mouthed, "Good night," and disappeared. The next morning brought a routine that felt surreal in its domesticity. The twins bounded into Folake's room at dawn, eager to show her their favorite breakfast cereal, teach her how to use chopsticks, introduce her to their hamster named Kimchi. Folake was still guarded, but children had a way of breaking through walls that adults couldn't. Junwoo joined them for breakfast, another first. He sat at the head of the table, watching the 3 children chatter and laugh, and when his eyes met Dunny's across the chaos, the heat in his gaze made her flush. After breakfast, Junwoo's phone buzzed. His expression hardened as he read the message. I need to handle something at the office. I'll be back this evening. But he didn't come back that evening. Or the next morning. By the second day, Dunny felt the familiar anxiety creeping back. Had she misread everything? Had that kiss been a mistake he regretted? The third evening, Junwoo finally returned. He looked exhausted, his usually impeccable suit rumpled, a bruise darkening his left cheekbone. Adunni's breath caught. What happened? Business, he said curtly, heading for his study. She followed him, closing the door behind them. Junwoo. He poured whiskey with hands that weren't quite steady. There's a situation developing. The Yamada Syndicate, a Japanese organization, they're pushing into territory I control. They want leverage. Adunni's stomach dropped. What kind of leverage? Junwoo drained the whiskey in one swallow. The kind that involves hurting people I care about to force me to back down. His eyes met hers. You and Folake are targets now. Because of me. Because I was careless enough to let them see that you matter. The world tilted. We're in danger. I won't let anything happen to you. He crossed to her in 3 strides, gripping her shoulders. I've already increased security. There are men watching the building, tracking every person who comes within 100 meters. But, Adunni, if you want to take Folake and go somewhere safe, back to Atlanta, anywhere, I'll arrange it immediately. No, the word came out stronger than she felt. Adunni. No, she repeated, lifting her chin. I didn't bring my daughter halfway across the world just to run again. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being afraid. If they want to come for us, then, she took a shaky breath, then make them afraid of you instead. Something fierce and primal flickered in Junwoo's eyes. You don't know what you're asking. I know exactly what I'm asking. Adunni stepped closer, her hand finding his chest. I'm asking you to protect us the way only you can. I'm asking you to be the man everyone fears when it comes to keeping my daughter safe. I'm asking you to go to war. The air between them crackled with tension. Then Junwoo's mouth was on hers, desperate and claiming, backing her against the desk. His hands gripped her waist, lifting her onto the polished wood, and Adunni wrapped her legs around him instinctively. You have no idea what you do to me, he growled against her lips. Show me, she whispered back. They kissed like they were drowning, like this might be their last moment before the world caught fire. When Junwoo finally pulled back, his eyes burned with determination. No one touches you. No one touches Folake. I'll burn their entire organization to the ground if I have to. Then do it, Adunni said. That night, Junwoo made calls. Lots of them. Adunni could hear his voice through the walls. Cold, commanding, lethal. She should be afraid of this side of him. Instead, she felt safe for the first time in years. The next morning, his head of security arrived. A man named Jeon Taeyong, built like a tank with eyes that missed nothing. He handed Junwoo an envelope without a word. Junwoo's jaw clenched as he read the contents. Then he looked at Adunni. Take the children to their room. Now. The command in his voice left no room for argument. Adunni herded all 3 children upstairs, her heart pounding. Through the floorboards, she could hear raised voices, Junwoo's rising above the rest in harsh Korean. 30 minutes later, he appeared in the doorway. His expression was controlled, but she could see the rage simmering beneath. What happened? Adunni asked once the children were distracted with a movie. They sent photos of you and Folake at the airport, at the park yesterday, with targets marked over your faces. His fists clenched. 72 hours to leave Korea or they'll solve the problem permanently. Ice flooded Adunni's veins. But beneath the fear, something else rose. Fury. She'd fought too hard to get Folake back, sacrificed too much, to let anyone threaten her child now. When do you move against them? She asked quietly. Junwoo blinked, clearly expecting fear or demands to flee. Tonight. Good. Adunni stepped closer. End this, Junwoo. Whatever it takes. He stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Then he pulled her into a fierce embrace. I'll come back to you. I promise. You better, she whispered against his chest. Because we're not finished yet. That evening, Junwoo left with Taeyong and 6 other men. Adunni watched from the window as their black SUVs disappeared into Seoul's glittering night, her hand pressed against the glass. The children sensed something was wrong. They were quieter than usual, the twins sticking close to Adunni while Folake watched everything with wary eyes. "Where did he go?" Folake asked. "To keep us safe," Adunni answered honestly. "Is he like the bad men who hurt Daddy back home?" Adunni knelt before her daughter. "No, baby. He's like the good men who protect people they love." "Does he love us?" The question hung in the air. Adunni thought about the kiss on the balcony, the way Junwoo had looked at Folake with such gentleness, how he'd moved heaven and earth to bring them together. "Yes," she said. "I think he does." The hours crawled by. Midnight came and went. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. Adunni couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. She paced the penthouse like a caged animal, checking her phone every 30 seconds for messages that didn't come. At 3:47 a.m., she heard the private elevator arrive. Her heart leaped into her throat as she rushed to the entryway. Junwoo stepped out, and Adunni's relief died in her throat. He was covered in blood, his shirt torn, his face bruised and swollen, his knuckles split and raw. But he was alive. He was standing. "It's done," he said hoarsely. "The threat is gone." Adunni ran to him, careful of his injuries. "You're hurt. I'll live." He swayed slightly, and she caught him, bearing his weight. "Come on. Let me take care of you." She led him to the bathroom, helped him out of his ruined clothes, and cleaned his wounds with gentle hands. Each cut, each bruise was evidence of what he'd done to protect them, the violence he'd committed in their name. 3 safe houses destroyed, Junwoo said as she cleaned a gash on his shoulder. 7 of their key people dead or disappeared. I found the mid-level boss who ordered the hit, a man named Yamada Kenji. What did you do to him? I made him understand that touching you or Folake would mean the extinction of his entire bloodline. His eyes met hers in the mirror, dark and dangerous. He believed me. Adunni should be horrified. She should recoil from the casual way he discussed murder and destruction. Instead, she pressed a kiss to his uninjured shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. Junwoo turned in her arms, wincing at the movement. "You're not afraid of me." "I'm afraid of losing you," she corrected. "There's a difference." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "I've done terrible things, Adunni. I've built an empire on blood and fear. I'm not a good man." "You're good to us," she said simply. "That's enough." "Is it?" His voice was raw with something that sounded like hope and despair tangled together. Instead of answering with words, Adunni kissed him. Gently at first, mindful of his split lip, then deeper as his arms came around her waist, pulling her flush against him despite his injuries. The kiss tasted like blood and whiskey and desperation, and when they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Stay with me tonight," Junwoo whispered. "I don't want to be alone." "I'm not going anywhere," Adunni promised. They ended up on his bed, fully clothed, wrapped around each other like survivors of a shipwreck. Junwoo's face was buried in Adunni's hair, his breathing gradually evening out into something approaching peace. She traced patterns on his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her palm. "My father was like me," Junwoo said suddenly, his voice barely audible. "Controlled half of Seoul before I did. He taught me that power was the only thing that mattered. That caring about people made you weak, gave your enemies leverage." His arms tightened around her. He was wrong. "You and Folake, the twins, you don't make me weak. You make me want to be better." "Then be better," Adunni said softly. "Not for us. For yourself." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes searching hers in the darkness. "I don't know if I can." "You already are." She kissed him again, slow and sweet. "The man who brought my daughter home, who makes breakfast with his sons, who holds me like I'm something precious, that man is already better." Something broke in Junwoo's expression. He kissed her with a tenderness that made tears prick Adunni's eyes, his hands mapping her face like he was memorizing every curve and angle. "I'm falling in love with you," he confessed against her lips. "It terrifies me." "Good," Adunni whispered. "Because I'm already there, and I'm terrified too." They made love that night with a gentleness that belied the violence of the evening, Junwoo treating Adunni like she was made of spun glass, his hands and mouth worshipping every inch of skin he could reach. When they finally collapsed together, spent and tangled in sheets, Adunni had never felt more safe, more seen, more whole. "I love you," she said into the darkness. "I love you," he echoed, and it sounded like a vow. The next morning, Adunni woke to find Junwoo already dressed, his injuries mostly hidden beneath fresh clothes. He kissed her forehead, whispered something about final business to handle, and was gone before she could protest. She found out later what that final business entailed. Junwoo had gone to the Yamada Syndicate's main headquarters in Itaewon, walked right through the front door with Taeyong at his side and demanded an audience with their sole boss, a man named Yamada Hiro. The meeting lasted 17 minutes. When Junwoo left, the Yamada Syndicate had officially withdrawn all operations from Seoul, Busan, and Incheon. Word spread through the underworld like wildfire. Baek Junwoo had gone to war over a woman and her child, and he'd won so decisively that an entire crime organization had fled rather than face his wrath. But Adunni didn't know any of this yet. She was in the kitchen making breakfast, the twins helping her while Folake shyly set the table, when Junwoo returned. He looked lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted. "It's over," he said simply. "Truly over. The Yamada Syndicate is gone from Korea. You and Folake are safe." Adunni launched herself at him, not caring that the children were watching, kissing him with all the relief and love and gratitude flooding through her. "Gross," the twins chorused, but they were giggling. Even Folake cracked a smile. "Are you Mama's boyfriend now?" Junwoo looked at Adunni, then at her daughter. "If your mother and you will have me, yes. I'd like to be." Folake considered this seriously. "Will you teach me Korean?" "Every day," he promised. "And take us to that park with the big slides?" "Whenever you want. And keep Mama safe forever?" Junwoo's voice dropped, becoming solemn. "With my life, Folake. I swear it." Folake studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. You can be the boyfriend." The twins erupted in cheers, and just like that, the morning dissolved into laughter and burnt pancakes and the kind of chaotic happiness Adunni hadn't known was possible. Over the following weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Folake started at Seoul International Academy, her English-speaking teachers and diverse classmates helping her adjust. The twins taught her Korean phrases and dragged her on adventures through the city. Junwoo scaled back his business operations, delegating more to trusted lieutenants so he could be home for dinners and bedtimes. And Adunni, she bloomed. No longer invisible, no longer afraid, she allowed herself to be loved and to love in return. Some nights after the children were asleep, she and Junwoo would sit on the balcony and talk for hours, about everything and nothing, about their pasts and possible futures, about the family they were building from the broken pieces of their separate lives. "I want to leave the business," Junwoo admitted one evening, his fingers laced through hers. "Not all at once, that would create chaos. But gradually. I want to build something legitimate. Something our children won't be ashamed of." "Our children," Adunni echoed, her heart skipping. He turned to her, his expression vulnerable. "If you'll have me. If you'll marry me. I know it's fast, I know we're still figuring this out, but—" "Yes," Adunni interrupted, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to everything." The proposal was nothing like the elaborate productions she'd seen in movies. There was no ring yet, no champagne, no grand gesture. Just two people on a balcony overlooking Seoul, choosing each other against all odds. They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at a Hanok-style venue in Songbuk-dong. Folake stood beside Adunni in a lavender dress, holding a bouquet almost bigger than she was, while the twins acted as ring bearers and promptly dropped one of the rings, sending all three children scrambling across the floor in a fit of giggles. It was perfect. 6 months after that, Junwoo officially retired from his organization, passing control to Taeyong with strict instructions to phase out the most violent operations. He invested in legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, a security consulting firm. The transition wasn't seamless, but he'd built enough loyalty over the years that no one challenged him. They moved out of the Gangnam penthouse and into a modern hanok in a quieter neighborhood, with a garden for the children and enough space for everyone to breathe. Dunny planted vegetables and flowers, teaching all three children about growth and patience. Junwoo learned to cook, badly, but with enthusiasm, and the family dinners became a sacred ritual of laughter and love. 3 years after that first kiss on the balcony, Dunny stood in their garden watching Folake, now 9 years old, fluent in Korean and English, confident in a way she'd never been before, playing basketball with Dae and Jean. They'd grown tall and gangly, their laughter echoing through the evening air. Junwoo came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "How invisible I used to be," Dunny said softly. "How I spent years believing I didn't matter, that I was just surviving. And now," she turned in his arms, cupping his face, "now I'm seen. Now I'm home. Now I have everything I ever wanted and things I didn't know I could dream of." Junwoo kissed her, slow and deep. "I love you, Dunny Beck." She'd taken his name, this woman who'd crossed oceans and fought systems and refused to stay invisible. "I love you too." From the garden, Folake's voice rang out. "Mama. Appa. Come play with us." "Appa. Father." Folake had started calling Junwoo that 6 months ago, and it still made him tear up every time. "Coming," they called in unison. They joined the children in the garden, the autumn light turning everything golden. Basketball turned into tag, which turned into all 5 of them collapsed in a laughing heap on the grass, breathless and happy. That night, after the children were asleep, Dunny and Junwoo sat on their porch swing, wrapped in blankets against the cooling air. Seoul glittered in the distance, but it felt far away from their peaceful corner of the world. "Thank you," Dunny whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me when I was invisible. For fighting for us. For choosing this." She gestured at their home, their life. "For choosing love." Junwoo pulled her closer. "Thank you for making me believe I deserved it." They sat there in comfortable silence, 2 people who'd been lost finding themselves in each other, until the stars came out one by one above them. If you made it this far, thank you for going on this journey with me. Hit that like button if this story touched your heart, and subscribe for more stories that will make you feel everything. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I love knowing where my viewers are around the world. Until next time, remember, family isn't just blood. It's who you choose to love and who chooses to love you back.